seems highly unlikely to me that anyone in this room has been tempted by a serpent to do something that you shouldn't do. Am I right? And as far as the devil appearing in front of me, horns and wings and hooves and all, and trying to get me to do something to do, after I passed out, I hope I would jump in and say, gotcha. If you exist, so does God, you lose. I doubt that I would have the presence of mind to do that. But unless we inhabit the world of Harry Potter and the Jungle Book where snakes really do talk, or unless we watch movies that I wouldn't watch where the devil is a character, these stories of temptation might seem a little bit distant from whatever we experience as something tempting us to do something we're not meant to do. And when we were all baptized, whether remembered or not, the first question we were asked is, do you renounce Satan and all the spiritual forces of wickedness in the world that rebel against God? Now either you or someone in your name said, I renounce them. So something must be going on. What is it that this temptation of Jesus is pointing us toward as we begin this journey of Lent? I think the first thing to say is it's not as simple as just being encouraged to break one of the 10 commandments. Come on, it's not all that hard. We know basically the difference between right and wrong. They're listed right there. We might be stumbling from time to time and chip or break or even completely blow up one of those commandments. But I doubt the devil would spend a whole lot of time trying to get us to do that. We know what's there. I think temptation is something way, way more subtle than that. A really silky combination of truth and lie woven together in a complete package. Maybe presented to us at a time when we're most vulnerable to something like that. Because it seems to be designed to either confuse or manipulate someone who's already a bit vulnerable. Like our first parents, Adam and Eve, newly created, childlike really. Or Jesus starving in the wilderness, perhaps still reeling from his experience of baptism and not sure what to do. These kinds of temptations seem not so much geared toward getting us to take a certain action, like eating a piece of fruit or making a stone turn into bread, but really to become something we're not meant to be at all. Something other than the person God has made us to be. It's a lot more subtle and complicated than just breaking a commandment. In the case of Eve, that serpent wove together truth and lie. It told the truth when it said that eating that fruit would open their eyes to wisdom, to knowledge of good and evil. But it told a lie when it said God was preventing them from eating out of jealousy. Any parent knows that children aren't ready for all the information now. They need to grow into it. And God, in God's wisdom, had told Adam and Eve to hold off. Wait until you're old enough, perhaps, to really know the difference between right and wrong. You'll know in my good time. But through a combination of truth and lie, the serpent tricked our first parents, and in doing so invited them to be something other than the beloved children of God, but instead to compete with God. Even more insidious, that serpent tried to destroy that relationship of trust, as if to destroy a relationship of trust between a parent and a child. It's a lie. And in the case of Jesus, this devil appeared, telling the truth about God's relationship to Jesus and Jesus to God's, and the kind of power and authority that came with it, but with the lie to try to convince him to be the kind of Messiah he wasn't meant to be, the kind of Messiah that dominates, that controls, like all the other rulers of the world. The devil in that case was already also trying to destroy that relationship between parent and child that God had announced in Jesus' baptism, just barely moments after Jesus experienced that revelation. The temptation to become something that we're not meant to be, but very subtly offered, very enticingly so, something we think we should want, even though it's not good for us. If we thought about our own life's journeys, can we remember a time when something or someone made us that offer, blended together truth and lie, and invited us to take a path we never would have considered if we weren't feeling vulnerable or weak or alone? Can you think of a time that might happen or has happened? What was it like? To be honest with you, I think that kind of temptation is really all around us right now. And I don't even need to start with the kinds of people that might manipulate or confuse to get something that they want. I'm talking about the algorithms that direct our desires, that point us toward what they might think we want. Programs that offer us something we might legitimately like and tell the truth and desire, but then lie to us and tell us that we'll be happier or better people if we get it. An algorithm that presents something to us that makes us angry, and for good reason, but then magnifies that anger so that it becomes rage, and we begin to see our fellow citizens as enemies. And the thing of it is, it's always in our pocket, or on our nightstand, or right in front of us. It's as if Satan has given up the avatar of the horns and the wings and the hooves for code that surrounds us all the time, speaking to us all the time, anytime we pick up that phone and hit our favorite colored icon. Of course, there might be people behind those that might seek to manipulate and confuse. But how often do we put ourselves in the path of the temptation that might invite us to become something that we don't want to be? All of that might sound overwhelming, but there's no need to fear, because that is exactly what Lent is for. A time to step back a little bit with Jesus in the wilderness, or even our ancient parents in the garden, to become innocent again and to pay attention to the voices that we need to be listening to. And that time does require of us a certain kind of practice. Whether it's taking a long walk a couple times a week, or keeping a journal, or paying attention to where we see the presence of God in our lives, perhaps setting the sources of the voices that might lead us astray aside. A digital fast that might not only separate us from some of what's on the screen, but the voices that appear to us in influencers and on Facebook and Instagram, our favorite news feeds, all those voices competing for our attention that don't necessarily have our best interests in mind. Even more, the other good news is we are completely capable of letting those voices pass, even of ignoring them, because of Jesus' own example in the wilderness. The same Spirit of God that infused him infuses us as well as we walk on our Lenten journey. The task for us is simply to choose that pattern, the journal, the walk, the prayer, the fasting, and practice it, and practice it again, and practice it again. And when we notice we fell down, to practice it again, so we learn always to listen so much more faithfully to the voice that calls us to life, the voice that calls us to freedom, the voice that calls us to serve and love one another. It's something that we can do. It's something that we often do, and it's something we practice doing as much as we can in this season of Lent. Do you renounce Satan and all the spiritual forces of wickedness that rebel against God? I imagine our answer is, I renounce them. How might we practice this Lent, ignoring the voices that lead us in that way, and instead always attend to the voice that promises and delivers the life we all desire?